a special Saturday live stream for Jordan Sheridan Reports. It is Saturday, April 14th. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day in New York City. Really sunny, nice and warm out, finally. But it is not, unfortunately, it is unfortunately not a great day in Syria, and it is not a great day if you are somebody who is looking for peace in the world. I headlined this report, Deja Vu, Iraq War Deja Vu, because it seems that's kind of what we're getting now. It seems like when I see the actions of the last 24 hours, it seems like we are getting a real deja vu to what happened in 2002 and what happened in 2003 in going into Iraq, launching a ground war in Iraq based on false pretenses, based on yellow clouds and mushroom clouds and all that stuff that simply there was no evidence for. But we launched a war anyway. So there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot to discuss to update you on. I already see my YouTube is buffering constantly, so hopefully that improves. I don't know why that keeps happening. I'm just going to wait just a couple more minutes, get in some more viewers here. We already have questions in the chat. Hey, Jordan, what do you think the odds are of a full ground invasion on Syria? I don't think we're going to have a full ground invasion in Syria. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to happen. I do think there's a strong chance we're going to spend a lot more money on bombing Syria and spreading democracy. I do think there's a chance we're going to send more special advisors, which are pretty much ground troops, but they're called something different. I do think there is a chance that we're going to spend more money in terms of, getting rid of Syria's chemical weapons, all these things. So I don't know if we're going to send in ground troops, but I do know we just bombed a country without any evidence against international law, which I'm also going to tell you about, and a lot of other things. So that's why I felt it important to come to you, even though it's on a Saturday. I think that we're in a really dangerous period in world history right now. I think we have not only a dangerous president, but I think we have a dangerous media who is not doing the job that journalists are supposed to do. Instead, the media is now basically just regurgitating what the CIA, the FBI, the Defense Department tell them. And they just regurgitate it, which I'm going to show you. And unfortunately, the best reporting out there right now is not from U.S. media, but from foreign media, So, and a lot of that foreign media has been slammed by U.S. politicians as well as U.S. corporate media as agents of Russia. But from what I see, they're the only ones doing real journalism investigation and scrutiny into the claims that are being made about Syrian President Bashar al-Assad gassing his people, which I still have seen no evidence for in this latest round of bombings that the U.S. just did. So definitely share this video. We'll try to see if we can get a bigger audience. It is a Saturday. It's 1 o'clock Eastern, so that would be around 10 a.m. Pacific time. YouTube, unfortunately, is not always letting people know when I'm live. They're not notifying people who press the bell. They're not even sending videos to subscribers. So unfortunately, we need to, I'm depending on you to press the share button and get this out. Tweet it, Facebook it, all that good stuff. So I will just give you the basics here so you know exactly what's happening. This is from the BBC from last night. Syria airstrikes, U.S. allies attack chemical weapons sites. The U.S., UK, and France have bombed 3 government sites in Syria in an early morning operation targeting chemical weapons facilities, they say. The move is a response to a suspected chemical attack on the town of Doma last week, which killed dozens. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he condemned the Western strikes, quote, in the most serious way. Russia, Syria's main ally, had threatened military retaliation if any Russian forces has been hit. Quote, the nations of Britain, France, and the United States of America have marshaled their righteous power against barbarism and brutality President Donald Trump said in an address from the White House, quote, "The purpose of our action tonight is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread, and use of chemical weapons," the president said. The wave of strikes is the most significant attack against Bashar al-Assad government by Western power in 7 years of Syria's civil war. And where were these attacks? At a Pentagon briefing shortly after Mr. Trump's announcement, General Joseph Dunford listed 3 targets that had been struck: a scientific research facility in Damascus, allegedly connected to the production of chemical and biological weapons, a chemical weapons storage facility west of Homs, and a chemical weapons equipment storage site at an important command post also near Homs. Reuters news agency cites a pro-Assad militia commander saying other locations were hit, including various sites close to Damascus, a military base in the Damas area, army depots in the eastern Qalamon, the Kiwash area where Iran is believed to have been building a base, and a site in the Qashan Hills, plus a research center in Masyaf, further north. The reports are unverified. So we struck essentially 3 separate locations: chemical weapons locations, chemical weapons storage locations, and all of this, this great American might and this great American power led our president, who, by the way, I covered about, I'd say, 40 to 50 Trump rallies in 2016. I'm still in therapy for the effect it had on me. But I covered about 40 to 50 Trump rallies, events, and Trump not only bashed George W. Bush and the Iraq War, he spoke as he was going to be less of an interventionist. We need to stop interfering in countries around the world. We need to nation build here in the United States. That was the kind of talk that a lot of people in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Ohio really, really liked. Well, this is what the president tweeted this morning. "A perfectly executed strike last night. Thank you to France and the United Kingdom for their wisdom and the power of their fine military. Could not have had a better result. Mission accomplished." I'm just going to leave that up for a moment. This president knowingly just uttered one of the most polarizing phrases, maybe in U.S. military history, that was said by George W. Bush: mission accomplished. So as I've said in other reports on the president, obviously I don't cover the president as much as the rest of the Trump media industrial complex. I try to cover issues that aren't getting a lot of attention, like Flint and environmental genocide, water contamination, these kinds of things. However, this president might be the most successful con man in United States political history. If you look at the last few weeks, a president who claimed on the campaign trail, "I want to get out of other countries. I want to stop bombing other countries. We've spent $6 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. That money needs to be spent on new airports, on infrastructure, on education, all these things." In the last couple of weeks, he's put John Bolton in as national security advisor, who, to me, is the most dangerous military figure probably of our lifetime. He has doubled the defense budget that was already massively, massively overfunded, with no need for the amount of money that we spend on defense. More than I think the next 10 countries combined is U.S. military. And he has now bombed Syria based on what I'm about to show you, I think, is trumped up and cooked up evidence of Bashar al-Assad gassing his people. And a president who called Jeb Bush a puppet, who bashed George W. Bush, who I agree with him on bashing George W. Bush, who's a war criminal, if you want to report it accurately. This is literally what he said. He said dropping 3 bombs or missile, 3 sets of, there's a whole lot of missiles. Some are saying on the media, 100 missiles dropped on 3 different locations. He says mission accomplished. So for the people in Michigan and Wisconsin and Illinois and Ohio and Pennsylvania who thought they were getting a real America First populist who was going to bring back your plants, who was going to do all this stuff, well, I think that tweet kind of says it all. I think that tweet kind of says it all. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's got John Bolton in his ear. He's got other neocons in his ear. And he also has a corporate media that has basically been poking at him for over 2 years now to take more action against Russia, Syria, and continue on and on and on with the military-industrial complex. So, I want to play something for you from Russia Today, RT America. It's sad that we have to depend on literally other like non-American news outlets to give us the truth. I try to give you the truth as best as I can, but obviously RT is a little bigger than just I. So the corporate media, CNN, is like foaming at the mouth. They're so happy. Same thing with MSNBC. Same thing with the New York Times, the Washington Post, which, by the way, has a $600 billion contract with the CIA. But the corporate media is not reporting the fact that this evidence that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad gassed his people is pretty much coming from Western-backed and Western-funded organizations. Let's play this.
Reports of a chemical attack first appeared, strangely enough, at almost the precise moment the battle had ended, when the Syrian government and rebels were negotiating on how to evacuate the latter. Reports first appeared on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and spread like wildfire.
Well, my colleague Ken Delaney and I have learned today that the U.S. now has blood and urine samples from some of the victims of this attack in Syria last weekend, and that those samples, according to U.S. officials, tested positive for chemicals.
Sources, the usuals, white helmets who serve as rescuers for Islamists and Syrian rebels. Also, the somewhat less known Syrian American Medical Society, SAMS. Together with the white helmets, they were cited by the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, virtually every Western media outlet reporting on this chemical attack.
On Saturday, April 7th, amidst continuous bombardment of residential neighborhoods in the city of Douma, more than 500 cases, the majority of whom are women and children, were brought to local medical centers with symptoms indicative of exposure to a chemical agent.
SAMS itself is funded by U.S. aid, $6 million in 2015. U.S. aid is widely believed to be an arm of the State Department and is banned in multiple countries, accused of interfering in domestic policies and promoting regime change. It even has an Office of Transition Initiatives. The management at SAMS are also, believe it or not, former USAID staffers. It was SAMS who reportedly provided the OPCW with samples of the alleged sarin gas that was used in Khan Sheikhoun, the site of a chemical attack last year. After which, Donald Trump sent 57 cruise missiles at the Syrian airbase. OPCW is on its way to Douma to investigate. We've contacted various groups, including the World Health Organization. They've cited SAMS, but have refused to go into any details. What comes next, no one can say. Whether the US will go ahead with a preemptive strike or whether cooler heads will prevail.
So that literally is RT America, reporting on the clear Western-funded organizations that are putting out the quote-unquote evidence, organizations that are directly funded from the State Department. Don't you think that's kind of an important detail? The fact that the evidence and the original push for, this evidence that Assad gassed his own people is coming from State Department funded organizations? I kind of feel that's kind of important, don't you think? I also want to play you, if you didn't listen to it, part of my interview with Middle East-based journalist Rania Khalek, We spoke the other day. It's up. The full podcast is up on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. And everybody share this video. Let's get it out there to more people. I want to play you some of this. This is from our interview a couple days ago before missiles were dropped.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point to emphasize, is that there has been no proper investigation done yet so far. So we don't know who carried out this attack or if a chemical attack even happened. And so the rush to judgment to just go in, ready to bomb is really disturbing, because the entire media apparatus, I mean, not just the corporate press, but from left to right, is just kind of pushing the same narrative of Assad did it. And so is the entire Trump administration. Nobody stepped back to say, okay, let me investigate this first. We're just going to drop bombs before we even have an investigation. And I mean, it's really incredibly disturbing. I mean, James Mattis is probably one of the only, and this is saying a lot, because Mattis is not exactly a peaceful guy, but he is the voice of reason. And from what I understand in Washington, D.C., unlike times in the past, when it was the Obama administration or even last year under Trump, when people did question and think, okay, well, we don't know if Assad actually did it or not. This time around, apparently most everybody in the Trump administration isn't even asking that question. They're just taking it as a given that the Syrian government did it. So there's no skepticism whatsoever coming from anybody. It's really, really, really crazy.
So that's one part of our interview. But I want to play another part now that I think shows you the dangers when it's essentially a corporate media that are paid stenographers for U.S. military and U.S. intelligence agencies, basically regurgitating the same exact unfounded, uninvestigated, unverified claims. Because the majority of this corporate media that's saying this are literally work in the defense industry, either as security or defense contractors. Here's another part of Rania and my interview via podcast. You look at CNN, MSNBC, they literally, it's an honor roll of quote-unquote former military analysts that are literally working for private security and defense contractors. Actually, I lied. One more question about that. Literally, Ben Norton did a great piece. Ben Norton did a great piece about this a while back. Like, it's just literally the conflict of interest is vile. I mean, you have on CNN, analyst after analyst is currently working in the defense industry, and they don't even disclaim it. It seems like we're literally asking the people what we should do who directly benefit off of more force.
Yeah. And we're not actually, and what's even better is how they're not identified as people who profit off of this. They're just identified as people who are experts and are analysts that can be trusted. So if you aren't even being informed that these people profit off of going to more war. And I honestly think that if Americans knew the actual reality of what takes place and what is taking place in the Middle East, in Syria, or whatever it is that the U.S. wants to bomb, they would be pretty much against going to war. And for them, they usually are, especially since, like, Iraq. Americans typically aren't interested in launching wars, but it doesn't seem to really matter anymore. But yeah, the conflict of interest is not just on CNN and MSNBC. It's also the people who are quoted as experts in the New York Times and the Washington Post, especially think tank experts that are quoted, often work at think tanks that are funded heavily by Gulf state countries like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, like the UAE, who all have very, very deep interests in overthrowing governments that they don't like as well, which happen to align with the governments America doesn't like. So that's also something to consider, and you're never told that. All of the people who are quoted as experts, especially people like you'll often hear Charles Lister is probably one of the most quoted experts, I put that in big quotes, on the issue of and Syria, and he works for the Middle East Institute, which is heavily funded by Saudi Arabia, and I believe by the UAE, possibly Turkish military, probably receives some funding from the State Department. So you have this whole network of it's like a think tank industry that's actually not think tanks. It's actually just a bunch of groups that are funded by defense contractors as well as various monarchies. And so everything you hear from experts in the mainstream press is typically crap.
Typically crap. And you know what? The bottom line is that Rania, who's a fantastic Middle East-based journalist, she was in D.C. this week. She's not on MSNBC. She's not on CNN. She doesn't get invited. to be quoted in the New York Times, because the corporate media, they're not actual journalists. They are accomplices to endless war. Accomplices to endless war. That's why it's so important to build more independent media outlets. Whoever you like, whether it's me or Jimmy Dore or Lee Camp or Kyle Kalinske or whoever it is, to support independent media, because we don't have a real journalistic industry in the United States anymore. We have pretend journalists. I call them public relations professionals masquerading as journalists, who are literally vessels. They're just stenographers for powerful interests, for neocons. I mean, I want to show you a tweet that I found astounding, just astounding. This is from Anne-Marie Slaughter. She is I think she's the head of the New America Foundation, which is basically another neoliberal think tank. Look at this. I believe that the US, UK, and France did the right thing by striking Syria over chemical weapons. It will not stop the war, nor save the Syrian people from many other horrors. It is illegal under international law, but it at least draws a line somewhere and says enough. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. By the way, she used to work for the State Department. So here you have the head of the New America Foundation, another corporate neoliberal think tank, who's literally saying, I believe the US, UK, and France, they did the right thing by striking Syria over chemical weapons, even though we don't know if the Syrian government actually did gas its own people. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to stop the war. It's not going to save the Syrian people. It's not even legal, what we did under international law. But at least it draws a line somewhere and says enough. Am I in the Twilight Zone here? Am I in the Twilight Zone? First of all these people, like Anne-Marie Slaughter, like Joe Scarborough, a lot of the Democratic politicians have been huffing and they've been puffing about, the rule of law, and Donald Trump is attacking the rule of law. And I agree with that. Yet they don't care that the United States is breaking international law. Let me make that clear. Our strikes on Syria are breaking international law. We are striking a sovereign nation. Secondly, Trump's strikes in Syria are also against the U.S. Constitution. Congress holds the right to declare war or for military action. There's certain things that a president could do on his own. But since essentially starting with Bush, we essentially stopped following the U.S. Constitution, and the president is allowed to do whatever they want. We don't actually go to Congress to declare war or to get permission for military strikes on Middle Eastern countries. So you have a think tank leader saying, it's against international law. It's not actually going to do anything. It's not going to help the Syrian people. It's not going to end the war. But it's good because we drew a line. We drew that red line. And I want to show you, if you thought that comment/tweet was ridiculous, I got one more that's better for you. Now, the Hillbots, the Hillary Clinton supporters who attacked me as a Russian agent, attacked Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, any progressive. You wait for them to attack Bernie Sanders when he runs again. They're going to say because he went on his honeymoon to Russia, he's really a Russian agent. Well, look what was tweeted by Jesse Ferguson. Jesse Ferguson was one of Hillary Clinton's spokespersons. I'd like to congratulate Susan Sarandon. I'm not trying to laugh because this is a serious topic we're talking about. We're talking about dropping about 100 missiles on a Middle Eastern country with no evidence that that government of the country that we just bombed actually did gas its own people. So very serious topic. But the Hillbots, the moral of the story for the Hillbots, it's Susan Sarandon's fault. it's Susan Sarandon's fault. You know? Pretty soon cancer is going to be Susan Sarandon's fault. Water contamination, it's her fault. Basically, the Hillbots, they still can't deal with the fact that it wasn't Susan Sarandon, it wasn't Jimmy Dore, it wasn't me, it wasn't Bernie. It was Hillary Clinton. She lost to a doofus. She lost to a con artist. And now, the same people, by the way, Jesse Ferguson and all these Hillary Clinton aides who have been huffing and puffing for Donald Trump to take action and for Donald Trump to drop bombs on Syria and for Donald Trump to take it to Russia, calling him a Kremlin puppet, are now doing this reverse psychology where, well, if it wasn't for Susan Sarandon not endorsing Hillary Clinton, this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened. Even though it's most likely that if Hillary Clinton became president, we'd already be in a full-scale war with Syria and possibly Russia. Hillary Clinton openly spoke for a no-fly zone over Syria, which would have antagonized Russia, Syria, and possibly Iran. It possibly would have been the catalyst for, I don't know about World War III, but a war. But you have a think tank leader saying this is against international law, which we did, and it's not going to actually stop the war or help the Syrian people, but, you know, let's draw that red line, even though we have no evidence. And now it's Susan Sarandon's fault for the crime of not endorsing Hillary Clinton and for kind of in a she never endorsed Donald Trump, but said, you know, tried to find a silver lining in Donald Trump winning the presidency, in that we have seen unprecedented activism and unprecedented energy among the progressive movement now because Donald Trump is president. But terrible. Viral News Network. Susan Sarandon has too much power. This woman is incredible. I have interviewed Susan Sarandon twice, I think. She is incredible. She's so incredible, she's apparently responsible for U.S. Dropping 100 missiles on Syria. I mean, you can't make this shit up, man. You can't make this up. So, Susan, I might reach out to you, find out what your secret is, find out if you have some hidden bunker in your estate in California, find out if you have a secret army behind you. So when you're not filming great movies, it's out of control. So at this moment, the UN Security Council is meeting in an emergency meeting about these airstrikes. Russia has obviously condemned these airstrikes because, like I said, they are not legal. They are not legal airstrikes. We are breaking international law. But we seem not to care. We seem not to care. And press the share button so we can get this out to as many people as possible. And there's also another element here. There's another element here. And it's not surprising, obviously, but the Democratic Party are showing themselves to basically be no better than the Republican Party when it comes to war, because the Democratic Party are a bunch of hypocrites. The Democratic Party, who largely didn't really speak up against Barack Obama when he was president, dropping bombs on Syria, the illegal drone strikes all over the world. A couple, like a tiny few of the Democratic Party spoke out and said, Obama, you need to come to Congress for this kind of authority. Do you remember the Democratic Party en masse criticizing, condemning, attacking President Obama for illegal airstrikes on Syria? Or the endless drone strikes, which, by the way, breeded way more terrorism? You know, call me terrible, but if you bomb my family, if you kill my kid, if you bomb my kid's school, I might want revenge. Again, I'm not defending terrorism. There's no, two wrongs don't make a right. Terrorism is indefensible. But it's like the United States doesn't seem to care why it is we have radicalized all these people, why it is they hate us. They don't, as George Bush loved to say, hate us for our freedom. They hate us because we're literally invading their country's bombing them endlessly, killing them and their families. That's why they hate us. So the Democrats who said and did nothing when it was Obama breaking international law and not following the U.S. Constitution, all of a sudden, quote unquote, here's the headline, Democrats blast Trump for not seeking congressional approval for Syria strikes. Congressional Democrats blasted President Donald Trump on Friday night for circumventing Congress and authorizing U.S. strikes against Syria, calling it unconstitutional and questioning the strategy. Many Republicans, on the other hand, applauded the president's move. Senator Tim Kaine, who has pushed Congress to pass a new authorization for the use of military force, deemed the president's actions illegal because he proceeded without approval from lawmakers. Quote, President Trump's decision to launch airstrikes against the Syrian government without Congress's approval is illegal and, absent a broader strategy, is reckless. Kaine said, today, it's a strike on Syria. What's going to stop him from bombing Iran or North Korea next? The last thing Congress should be doing is giving this president a blank check to wage war against anyone, anywhere. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said in a statement that the Syrian regime's chemical weapons attack was, quote, a brutally inhumane war crime that demands a strong calculated response. However, she said Trump must present a more comprehensive strategy on Syria to Congress and seek lawmakers' approval. Representative Eric Swalwell of California tweeted that it was the same as when Trump struck Syria last year without congressional approval. Quote, what changed? Zero. They're still using chemical weapons. This is the result of a failure to have a strategy and engage in Middle East countries to solve this problem. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said, quote, a pinpointed, limited action to punish and hopefully deter Assad from doing this again is appropriate. But the administration has to be careful about not getting us into a greater and more involved war in Syria. So, you know, it's so ridiculous. First of all, they're right. They are right, even though it's coming from a very cynical place. They're absolutely right. Trump is not following the constitutions. It is illegal what he just did. It was illegal last year. So in one corner, the Democratic Party is right, even though, like Nancy Pelosi, shocker, is pushing the U.S. intelligence, or as I call it, the United States of oil, talking point that Assad gassed his people. The investigation isn't complete. There's still no evidence of such, but that never stopped the United States from invading another country or bombing another country or putting innocent civilians' lives at risk. So in one corner, the Democratic Party is absolutely right on this. But the problem is they're not right based on actual integrity. They're just doing it because it's Trump. Where was this outcry from the Democratic Party when it was President Barack Drone Obama? Where was this outrage when Obama was dropping drone bombs on Yemen and Pakistan? Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Libya. I mean, you heard a couple here and there, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, Keith Ellison, Raul Grijalva. You heard isolated calls. But you didn't particularly, I didn't hear Nancy Pelosi then. I didn't hear Chuck Schumer then. So these Democrats, they don't give a damn about following the Constitution. They don't give a damn about launching illegal wars. They don't give a damn about killing innocent civilians around the world. They certainly don't care if all these actions actually create more terrorists, because make no mistake, all right, we're knocking out ISIS, as they say, with this aggression towards Syria. Well, you're just creating the next ISIS, because they just regenerate, because you keep invading other countries that you don't belong in based on basically a mad dash for their oil. You don't actually have confirmed intelligence. And if they do have confirmed intelligence, they don't actually provide us with the evidence. Do you ever notice that NBC News, ABC, CBS, PBS, MSNBC, CNN, all they do is just report U.S. officials have confirmed? That's not journalism. Okay, if they've confirmed it, can you please tell us what that confirmation is based on? What is the confirmation that Bashar al-Assad just gassed his people? Which, by the way, as I've reported, he's essentially won the war. The Syrian government has taken back 90% of Syria from the rebel army. So what is, it seems that every time Bashar al-Assad makes gains, and basically, you know, the rebels and the Syrian government were actually in negotiations. That's not reported on CNN. They were in negotiations right now. Graham Swallow says, the UN meeting of the Sarandon Council. Yeah. What is the common sense reason that Bashar al-Assad, while the rebels and the government of Syria, his government, are negotiating, why would he launch a chemical weapons attack on his people? It makes no sense. We'll see what happens. It's now Saturday at 1:45 in the afternoon. Hopefully there is no more missiles dropped. Hopefully there's no retaliation by Russia or Syria against the United States, which they would be within their right because we just illegally dropped 100 missiles on them. Hopefully the temperature goes down. Hopefully, I don't know the numbers yet, and the U.S. government won't actually report the real numbers, but hopefully there were no civilian casualties in these strikes. I don't believe that it was only 3 locations that were bombed. I'm sure there were other locations bombed where civilians do live. Michael Cooper says, sure, it makes sense. Assad is tired of winning. You know, like Trump says, they're going to get so tired of winning. We're going to win so much. It's terrible. It's terrible. And please share this video. Let's get this out to more people. So as I move on from one very, very grim topic and terrible topic, I just want to briefly tell you a good topic, an exciting topic. And by the way, this is a serious time. We just dropped 100 missiles, so I'm not doing jumping jacks, but I want everyone to know the news that was announced last night. An interview I did with a great progressive media host, a good friend of mine. His name's Jimmy Dore. That's up on his channel right now. We spoke, I think the interview was about 25 minutes long. We talked about Syria. We talked about Russia. We talked about a lot of the fake stories that go around. We talked about how awful the corporate media is. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about my plans for a new media network. We talked about what I think is desperately needed in the U.S. as far as media. We talked about all those things. So definitely go check out the interview if you missed it. And during that interview, I made an announcement. I've been kind of teasing at this, but I made an announcement of what the name of the network is that we're trying to launch. And if you missed it, that is the network we are looking to launch as soon as humanly possible. Status Coup. Status Coup. And the reason for the name is very, very simple. As YouTube buffers again, hold on one second. La-da-dee, la-di-da, what will be, will be. Do-do-do, 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 do-do-do. Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, so apparently as soon as I was going to release the name of the network, YouTube decided to freeze me out and buffer again. So it's always interesting when YouTube seems to freeze every time I have a good announcement to make. So our network is Status Coup. It's very simple. We need a coup d'etat of the status quo in this country. Obviously, I'm not talking about an armed coup d'etat. This is nonviolent, and this is a journalistic coup d'etat of the U.S. And it starts with overthrowing the corporate media. The corporate media in this country is as big as a problem as Donald Trump is, in my opinion. I think the corporate media does more covering up for the powerful, does more covering up of environmental genocide, does more covering up of police brutality and economic terrorism perpetrated by the oligarchy, and does more covering up on the legalized bribery that this country is basically operating under. And I think that, when I was at the Young Turks, obviously I did a lot of reporting that others don't do. You know, I was at Standing Rock 7 times. I was in Flint 9 times. I was in East Chicago, Indiana 6 times. I don't say this to pat myself on the back. They invested in me. I had the funds to do it through them. And I reported on things that I find to be very, very important. And while I was out in the country, while I was out on the road, I probably spoke with between 1,000 and 2,000 just normal Americans, both on camera and off camera. And I kept getting the same exact feedback, We desperately need real reporting on real people and real struggle and real stories of corruption going on the local and state level. Because there is quiet corruption going on that doesn't get televised, that BuzzFeed doesn't write about, that doesn't get written about in print or in digital, that it's happening all around us. But the corporate media made a decision long ago not to bother with that stuff because they felt it would be cheaper and more lucrative. Let's just put on like Democrat A on this side of the screen, Republican on this side of the screen, a pretty looking anchor in the middle, and we'll just have a food fight for 4 or 5 minutes. And that's essentially what corporate media is. There's no substance. It's not real news. It's kind of like World Wrestling Federation when I was a kid. Scripted entertainment that pretends to be real. Although I did love the WWF when I was a kid. So, over the last few months, I've really thought about what is needed, and what is needed is a status coup. And it's going to be based on real journalism. It's going to be based on in-the-field journalism. I am going to be getting back in the field as soon as I can. That obviously involves funding. If you look right to the left of me, you know how you can fund me. This funding is going to go to getting me in the field. It's also going to go so we can hire a camera person. It's also going to go so we can hire other reporters. I want this to be really a people-powered media company. I do not plan on doing endless videos and reporting on President Trump. I do not plan on doing endless videos and reporting on Russia and these things. I do not plan on covering the daily horse race in DC. I plan on covering the disappearing middle class, environmental genocide happening across the country, which is predominantly water contamination and fracked gas pipelines. I plan on covering police brutality, and not just the brutality of the police, but the economic brutality being waged against African Americans, brown people, Native Americans, and other minorities. I plan on covering local and state officials that are corrupt. And I need an army around me. So whether that's funding me at patreon.com/JordanCharitonReports, whether that's sharing my work, which will eventually become other people's work, this is going to require a much bigger network than just I. There's going to be other reporters. And those reporters are going to be like-minded. They might not have my style. I don't want it. I don't want mini-me's running around. There's already enough having one. But they're going to be aggressive. They're going to have a righteous anger at what's going on in this country, and they are certainly not going to be neutral. So whether you could help with $1 or $2 a month, $5 a month, whatever you could do, or you could share the videos. You could share the videos here. Press the share button. You could send them out on Facebook, on Twitter. We're on Steemit now. That's steemit.com/@JordanChariton. You have to sign up to get accepted by Steemit. And then follow me, steemit.com/@JordanChariton. We're going to get on a whole different level of platforms. We also want to communicate directly with you, so JordanChariton.com. We are constructing statuscoup.com. It's not ready right now, so definitely go to JordanChariton.com. Put in your email. We're not going to surveil you. We're not going to steal your data. We ain't doing any of that. We just want your email so we can directly communicate with you, tell you exciting news when we have it on the progress being made with growing this network, and many other things. So we need everybody. As you can see, YouTube is suppressing our content. 66 watching right now. I thank you so much. There's definitely more people that would like to be watching us, but YouTube is not delivering our content. I'm not complaining. It's not an excuse. That's just the reality of what's happening. So we need more and more and more people to help us by sharing the videos. Put it out on your Twitter. Put it out on your Facebook. Let people know that I'm back at youtube.com/JordanCharitonReports. If you have story ideas, you could send it to email jordan@protonmail.com. That's email jordan@protonmail.com. if you're interested in potentially investing, because we are looking for investors right now, progressive investors. We're not looking for like Democratic Party donors to give us money. You could also email at emailjordan@protonmail.com. I can't thank Jimmy Dore enough for interviewing me. I appreciate it. And that's it. So that's the name of our network. We are currently in the construction phases. We're trying to get funding. Right now we have, let's see, 200 and as it loads, we have 259 paid patrons. 259 paid patrons. That has definitely gone up since the Jimmy interview came out, so I can't thank Jimmy enough. And I can't thank his viewers that have now subscribed to my YouTube as well as supported the Patreon. To be very clear with you, that Patreon is not going to me. That Patreon is going so we could pay other people because I want to build a network. And I will be as transparently as humanly possible. Straight up, there were lies said about me that I had misused money and that I party lavishly and all those things. They're not based on anything other than BS. Like, there's no evidence that I did that. I've never misused any company's funds. I'm an honest person. I'm not perfect by any means. Some people say I have a bit of an ego. I'm working on that. You know, I'm trying my best just to cover the real news. Cover the real news. And I'm also trying to be transparent. You're going to know if you're kind enough and you support us, whether it's especially financially, you're going to know where this money's going because I'm going to tell you where the money's going. You're going to know who I'm hiring and that money is going towards those people. You're going to know when I have enough money to get back in the field to Flint or other places. You will know. There's no reason to hide anything because we're not trying to get big corporate sponsors. We're not trying to get, Democratic Party or Republican Party donors to give us money. I don't want their money. I want to build an organization based on truth, transparency, and covering real news, real people, real struggle, and real corruption. So thank you to the people who have become patrons, even as low as $1 a month. You don't realize it is making a difference. We're getting closer to our goal of getting back in the field. We're getting closer to our goal of getting investors. We're getting closer to our goal of launching status coup. So thanks again. And now moving on to the reporting that I actually want to do in the field, but don't have enough funding at this moment to do. If you're unaware, the governor of Michigan has declared Flint's water, quote, restored. As I've told you in multiple videos this week, that is based on BS science. It's not based on reality, but the governor doesn't want to pay anymore for the water pods in Flint, so he shut down the water pods in Flint. This is free water bottles for impoverished, poisoned people. Let's remember, they've been poisoned. And the governor is declaring, based on federal testing and state testing, that the water is safe. Well, I'm here to tell you, because I've been working on a major piece on that, that's not true. That science that he's using is total bull pucky. Trying not to curse. So you have a governor who, while giving Nestle, they just allowed Nestle to increase their extraction of water from the remaining fresh water in Michigan. They went from 200 gallons a minute to 400 gallons a minute. So that governor is allowing Nestle to do that, basically for no money, but shut down free water to the people of Flint. Sound a little backwards to you? So while that is going on, if you remember, while I was at the Young Turks last year, I was covering a town hall in Flint. I believe it was in April of 2017. And at that town hall, residents were asking questions up at the microphone of their government. They were expressing anger and frustration because at that time, it was 3 years since the water crisis. And they still have not had the pipes changed. They still have insane medical costs and illnesses that are not being covered by the federal government for the poisoning perpetrated against them by the federal government. So 6 residents that night were arrested for the crime of voicing their frustration, It was held in a church. There were religious undertones of that arrest that, you're not allowed to cuss at a church and all this stuff. One woman went while being arrested for, again, just speaking out too loudly in frustration of her poisoning and the lack of a response from the government, she had bruises all across her left arm. Her husband was arrested for basically defending his wife while she was rammed into a wall by a police officer. Another gentleman, he was 19, he was arrested for the crime of saying, literally verbally, just saying to the police, "This is fascism." Right after he said that, he was cuffed. Another woman was arrested for the crime. She opened a door, and I guess the door accidentally slammed in a police officer, and he arrested her. So I covered that story while I was there at the town hall, and then I covered it after because Genesee County, Flint is a city, part of Genesee County, was basically holding over these 6 people's heads, possible felony charges. Felony charges. So fortunately, those felony charges were not filed, and it was just announced the other day by the Michigan ACLU that 4 of those 6 residents that were arrested have filed charges against the city of Flint as well as the police department. So I interviewed one of the gentlemen yesterday who was one of the residents arrested. His name is Tony Palladino. He and his wife, Leah Palladino, were arrested for the crime of speaking out too loudly against their government. His wife, Leah Palladino, is the woman I was just referring to who had bruises all across her arm. And I wanted to talk to Tony, tell me about the lawsuit, why you are filing this, and also if he believes the governor's claims that the water is now safe. Tony, if you look at him, he kind of reminds you of Santa Claus. So here's my interview with Tony Palladino.
So, this seems to me the police department there and the politicians there have basically tried to intimidate the residents since this all happened. And that's what was going on at that town hall. When residents, peacefully fight back, they get, they kind of get bossed around or thrown in jail. Is that kind of, part of what this is about, to make sure they know that's not okay?
Well, apparently you were there that day too, George, but it seems like, we had that church rocking. The major point here is that why are we, Mayor, having these meetings in these churches, and you're taking us under a religious rule? It's bad enough that we can't speak out in public without, let alone going to city council. It's atrocious now to go to a city council meeting and even speak up, because now you have a cop on you right now. I mean, aren't we there to be heard? And even if you don't like what we're saying, it is our right to say that. That whole setup at the church just was funky from the get. It just wasn't right.
And I get the feeling that if this happened in Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor, they'd be treating residents quite differently.
Well, yeah, everybody's saying it's a black thing, which I'm not saying it's not, but let's not forget, there's a lot of civil rights, and even the civil rights that were the poster child for this disaster. What the hell good is that doing us? That didn't bring no money. That didn't put no water in any of our mouths. That didn't fix our pipes. That didn't fix our homes or our health. Let's not forget, there's certain levels that are just, or ages that are not getting taken care of. They totally destroyed us 2014, 15, 16, 17, and now they're just now talking about putting a registry together. So we lost 3-4 years of people's health care or health and problems. And now they're shutting down the pods. We had to go to Lansing and raise a ruckus more or less to open this up still again. There's so much being pushed under. It's crazy. It is one big scam.
And do you buy the governor's declaration that the water is, quote, restored?
George, let me tell you something about the governor saying that. He don't bathe in here. He don't drink in here. And I'm even fighting close friends and relatives telling me that, everything's fine. Well, come on in. I'll show you the balls and hairs we're still pulling out the sink. I'll let you hear my lungs. Just look at the blisters. We still have them. And like I said, I can't speak for anybody else. Other than the fact that most of the city will tell you this water is not good enough to consume, let alone pay $1 for it. I wouldn't pay $1 for this shit. They got to get $120 People are $1,500, $3,000 in debt. They get to shut their eyes down and then kick them out and take it. Where the hell do we live, man? Man, this water's not good. They can say all they want. As far as the lead and the copper, you did a great job there, Mr. Edwards. Let's talk about the chemicals that GM, yes, I said GM, has been dumping in this river for hundreds of years. You have DuPont on that river. You can't just put 7 layers of dirt over this shit and call it a park. That's what they did down at Kettering. No, this water's not good.
And I don't know what rationale, both morally or from a government point of view, to give Nestle, what are they allowing them, 400 gallons a minute now?
Yeah, they increased it from 2 to 4, I think. 250 to 4.
Yet they closed down the pods.
Right. And it's the same day. It's like, here, let's shove this pipe in your ass, Flint. You know? You couldn't even give it a clean out if you had to. You just had to pour it right by it. It was a raw rip-up, and I honestly feel that Governor Snyder was in for this just to make sure that Nestle's passed. Because this isn't a yesterday plan. They've been putting the wool over Michigan's eyes for years now about that Nestle's corporation.
Right.
And let's not forget, the old boys dying over their sleep all the time. They need to make it right, George. It's not good the way Nestle got away with that shit. And the truth of the matter is, how do we let a company in here like that anyways? What does that do to the residents, or even to the state? You know, I got to say this too. Everybody's saying Flint this and Flint that. Damn it, people, you better open your eyes. This isn't Flint. This is Michigan. This is all the way from across the UP through that damn stupid-ass pipeline all the way down into here. They are poisoning this whole state. And they're taking our assets. And we're paying for water that runs around us every day. And they're killing us.
And, you know, it seems to me it's getting no national media attention, but one thing getting lost is residents are still sick and getting worse. I mean,
all of us are still sick. Like right now, I'm going in Thursday. I need to get my stomach taken care because I couldn't afford to even have an ultrasound. And I got to go in now for a gas or whatever. You're running pipes down my throat to find out what's going on because I'm doubled over. And I have for the last 2 years. And in my eyes and Leah's bones, and we just freaking man. It is not good. And I don't want to sound like an old man crying while kids are falling by the wayside. Even the schools aren't even being taken care of. The students are falling apart. You know, who was at that hearing or that Lansing, you know, when they were down on the floor? And it was just terrible, man. They were talking about genocide. The Jewish guy come in and had a day set aside. And I was thinking, wow. I mean, I'm not trying to compare this, you know, to the Holocaust or whatever. But no way is this not much different. I mean, isn't this like genocide? It's terrible, man. And then when you can't speak up, you get kicked out. You know, you got to go have the street water, and it's frustrating. We're angry. We've got politicians that are running this whole situation, and they don't even look you in the eyes anymore. I can't take this further. Me and Leah's at wit's end.
And the recently re-elected mayor, Karen Weaver, she is supposedly going to Lansing to try and convince the governor to keep the pods open. What do you say to that?
And go. Trip number 348. How are you doing with that? Here's what I say to Karen Weaver. Like I said a long time ago, Mrs. Mayor, if you had never paid your water bill back then, when you tried to convince your residents that we needed to keep the funding from the state here, had you never, Miss Weaver, paid your water bill, some of us probably still would have been following your lead. As of right now, your trips to Lansing, and I'm not speaking for everybody, your trips to Lansing doesn't hold shit. It doesn't hold shit. They could close these pods down all day. You're one person. I'll give you credit for that for trying, but you haven't done nothing with it so far. They keep blocking you for some reason. Either them or somewhere around them
So that was Tony Palladino. He is a resident of Flint. He actually ran for mayor. There was a recall election for the mayor of Flint. That happened in November. He was one of, I think, 16 or 17 people who ran. He's what I would call, an original Flintstone. I've interviewed him a bunch of times in Flint, as well as his wife. And you could kind of hear in his voice that he's beaten down. He's beaten down. And that's what I get from a lot of residents I've spoken to. I still speak with residents on the ground there. They're just exhausted, and mentally and physically just beaten down. Because, wouldn't you be? After April 25th is 4 years. 4 years since the water switch. They switched from the Detroit water system to the Flint River. And these people, they get sicker and sicker. Their medical bills get higher and higher. And there's no real relief. And you have the governor who, frankly, presided over their poisoning, who's really done nothing for them, who's now hoisting forward science that my reporting is showing is very, very questionable, to close down free water bottles, which puts more lives at danger. Flint is 45% impoverished. I'm sure the number for underemployment makes it much. Most people don't have the money to go buy stacks and stacks of bottled water. So now they're going to be forced to drink through the tap water. Even though it's filtered, studies have shown the filtering does not stop. The filtering does not stop all lead from seeping in to the water. The filters do not stop all lead from seeping into the water. The filters go bad very quickly. The filters also can breed bacteria. This isn't my opinion. This is research and studies that have been done. So they're basically drinking water with filters on that go bad, don't stop lead, and create bacteria. And you have residents like Tony who tell me he still showers and his eyes are burning while he showers, or people get rashes while they shower. But they say totally safe to bathe and drink. And why this is so important, and I always say this, but I have to repeat it, this isn't just about Flint. If you think this is just about Flint, you're mistaken. There's water contamination happening all over this country, but it's not just water contamination. If something happens in your neighborhood, if people get sick or something bad happens to you or your family, if the government is allowed to do what they're doing to Flint, that's the blueprint for how they're going to handle other situations elsewhere. If the government is allowed to poison its people and then not actually fix the problem, they're never going to fix the problem completely, because lead poisoning mostly produces permanent damage, cognitive damage, autoimmune damage. You could get cancers. Most of these people, bone problems, lead stunts bone growth. But if the government is allowed to poison its people and then is not held accountable, uses fake science to declare, mission accomplished in Flint, we're closing down the water pods, that's not America, or what we claim America is. That's not America. And Tony, his wife, and several other residents were arrested there because there's been an intimidation. There's been an intimidation attempt to intimidate the residents so that they don't fight back, peacefully fight back, so that they don't protest, so that they don't speak out against the really out-of-control police department in Flint and the out-of-control government. You know what? The least you could do for citizens, you sat there while they were poisoned, you told them nothing was wrong, is listen to them yell at you. You're lucky that's all you're having to deal with. So I'll keep in touch with Tony. I'll update you on this lawsuit. Again, it's 4 residents that were arrested. There were 6 in total arrested, but 4 of them are part of the plaintiffs. They have sued the city of Flint. They have sued the Flint Police Department, basically stating, their First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights were impinged upon. So I will follow up on that. Lastly, we have another story that I couldn't believe this when I saw this tweet. So at a Starbucks, this, I believe, happened yesterday. Look at this scene from Starbucks. This is what happened to 2 African Americans. 2 black people. I've been criticized for calling African Americans. 2 black people who were simply there. They hadn't ordered anything yet. Take a look.
Don't get no fight with them. Don't get no fight with them. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, what did they get called for? Because there are two black guys sitting here meeting me? Yes. Well, what did they do? What did they do? Someone told me what they did.
They didn't do anything. I saw the entire thing.
They didn't. What did they do?
And the woman says for paying customers and after they didn't do anything.
So you could read this tweet. The police were called because these men hadn't ordered anything. They were waiting for a friend to show up who did as they were taken out in handcuffs for doing nothing. All the other white people are wondering why it's never happened to us when we do the same exact thing. Starbucks' response to this. Let me find it. Hold on. No. That's not it. Let me find Starbucks' response. Give me a minute. What will be? Starbucks' response, somewhere here. Starbucks responded, "We're reviewing the incident with our partners, law enforcement, and customers to determine what took place and led to this unfortunate result. We're reviewing the incident with our partners, law enforcement, and customers to determine what took place and led to this unfortunate result." So what you have there, and my apologies, I'm not positive which Starbucks or what state this happened in. I'll try to get that information. So obviously, somebody called the police on two black people who were pretty much sitting, waiting for a friend. I've gone to Starbucks before. I've gone places before and not bought anything and sat down waiting. Nothing ever happened to me. I'm sure you have too, if you're a white person. You know, sometimes you go into somewhere, you don't immediately buy something, you wait. You know, it's happened when I've gone on dates. You show up first, you sit down, you don't immediately order a drink or order anything, you just sit down and wait. It's not a you know, if they were hanging around there and you saw a gun in their pocket, you saw a gun hoisted with them, or you saw them doing some strange things or being inappropriate with your customers, that would be one thing. But you see two black guys sitting there, they didn't order anything, but it seems to me from what the white people at Starbucks said, they weren't doing anything outlandish. They were just sitting there minding their own business. I don't know who called the police. It could have been people who work at Starbucks. It could have been another customer. Who the hell knows? But it's kind of ridiculous and obviously racist and obviously a double standard. And I'm very happy to see that at least the white people there were saying they didn't do anything. What are they getting arrested for? So let me show you. I thought this was interesting. Hold on one second. Sean King tweeted this. "We know what happened. It was a gross double standard rooted in racism. What we need is an apology followed by restitution. We need you to proactively make this right by the two young men you violated." Couldn't have said it better. Like, this goes back to, the out-of-control police. The out-of-control police in this country that seem to be very, very scared. Very, very scared when they see black people walking on the street. Or they see black people, move their hand in the general direction of their waist. They think that they have a gun. Most of the time they have, Skittles or a cell phone. The inherent racism in our society, I don't have the answer on how that can be fixed. I really don't. But, the problem is most of the police coming are also white. And they are trained to think that black people propose more of a risk. Mind you, the most terrorism and gun gun mass shootings in this country are perpetrated by extremist right-wingers, white right-wingers. But you're not going to see this really on CNN or any of these places. The fact that two black guys, were arrested at Starbucks for the crime of standing there and not ordering a latte right away. And by the way, I don't drink it all the time, but I like Starbucks coffee. This is one Starbucks. It's an unfortunate thing that happened. So I'm not saying boycott Starbucks, but we need to know, what exactly were they arrested for? What were they pulled out of Starbucks for? Did they say something to customers that was inappropriate? Did they invade people's personal space? It's not illegal to go into a business and not buy anything right away. Sometimes you see signs, bathroom only for paid customers. Okay. But you don't see a sign like you can't come in if you don't buy anything. A lot of times you have two people sitting at a table somewhere and one person bought something and the other person didn't. You ever gone to a restaurant, you have 3 or 4 people and 3 people buy something and one says, I'm not hungry? So it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And by the way, I'm sure they said before being arrested, they were waiting for a friend. They were waiting for a friend. Why didn't the police say, okay, can we call your friend? Or let's wait here to see your friend come? It shouldn't have even come to that. It's so backwards. So I'll follow up on it. I'll see what Starbucks actually does. I will follow up as best as I can on this to make sure that there's some justice. I hope to find the police report in this incident. I hope we get a better action from Starbucks. I hope we find out who called the police and why. So I will follow up on this as well as the other stories I'm currently working on and following up on. Thank you for watching this special Saturday broadcast. I might be live again this weekend, depending if we drop more bombs or there's more revelations and more escalation in our endless war. Now dropping estimates say about 100 missiles. Thank you for watching. I encourage you to share this video. I encourage you, send it on Twitter, send it on Facebook. Let people know I'm back, breathing, and reporting. Don't worry about the trolls. There's going to be more trolls as this channel gets bigger, as we launch Status Coup. I try not to worry about the trolls as best as I can, so thank you all for your support. And as I said, thank you for your financial support at patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Have a great weekend.